This is the main man. This is the CEO of Bankers Trust here in Central Iowa, actually all over the place. Suku Radia is joining us here, and very nice of you to stop by and visit with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
And unfortunately, he knows our boss.
Yeah.
And that was our connection here, so we're trying to get past that, right? The first thing he said, he goes, I know your boss, unfortunately.
So. You all have my sympathy.
Yes,
Thank you. We're glad somebody finally understands.
But you have a most interesting story, educated here in Central Iowa. You have some very close ties here. For people that may not know how you got to be the boss.
Well, I'm from Uganda, East Africa originally, but I'm of Indian descent. My family was fourth generation in Uganda. I wanted to go to Berkeley and got accepted. My parents decided they would go visit the campus. I was raised in an extremely wealthy family, and they returned back 3 months later. Instead of just simply going to Berkeley, they went around the world, and this is before the internet or any sort of telephone communications. And my mother at the airport, she's 5 feet tall, weighs about 110 pounds. Never raised her voice until that day and said, son, if you ever talk about going to that country, I'm going to kill you.
Oh,
said,
so she approved of it.
Yeah, exactly. She said, well, the boys wear their hair down to here. They smoke this terrible stuff called marijuana, and they basically sit out. They don't go to class. They protest the Vietnam War, and the girls are really aggressive. And I said, can I please go there? Through an American friend of mine who was in the U.S. Agency for International, the U.S. Aid Program, a very close friend. I played a lot of golf with him. He convinced my parents to send me to a good conservative place in the middle of nowhere where the weather was lousy and I couldn't get into trouble even if I wanted to. He had a degree in agronomy from Iowa State.
There you go.
So I came to Iowa State, and a year later my family was evicted by Idi Amin.
I want to hear more about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
You ever saw the movie The Last King of Scotland?
I haven't seen it.
Forrest Whitaker plays Idi Amin and got the Academy Award, but Idi Amin in the movie, as he portrays it, he couldn't really show the real Idi Amin because Idi Amin was known to have guests for dinner, and at the end of the dinner he actually would behead them. He was a madman.
Wow.
So my family was very fortunate. They escaped alive, lost everything. There was a fortune. So they ended up in the UK because originally the Indians had been brought by the British to build a railroad in 1889.
Okay.
So there was some connection to the UK. So they were offered asylum in the UK. So that's where my family is.
So they lost their home
everything.
possessions.
They didn't walk out with a suitcase.
Well, wow.
And so I was in this country, became a man without a country, and had to rush through college. And then took a job in Des Moines, but the summer I was, the first summer I had to find a job just to find a way to pay for my education. Ames was not the place where I wanted to be because of the abundance of student labor.
Right.
So I found a job for a startup company in Waukee, and a friend of mine said to me, look, you know what, why don't you stay with my family? It's my father, mother, my 16-year-old sister. And he said he was going to be in Cedar Rapids doing an engineering internship with what was then Collins Radio. Today it's Rockwell International.
Okay.
So he said, why don't you go there and stay with my family? It's much closer than Ames, plus you won't have to pay rent. I declined only because I didn't really feel comfortable spending 3 months at the home of somebody I'd never met.
Sure.
3 days later at 6 a.m. the phone rang, and the person at the other end said, young man, you're spending the summer with us. Do you understand? And I said, good God, this woman sounds just like my mother. So I said, yes, ma'am, I'll be there. So
You did what she said, huh?
I'm an obedient person, respect my elders, so I showed up at their house, and the third day I returned home from working. She sat me down at the kitchen table and she said, of the 50 boys in the dorms with our son, the only one he trusts in the same house with his 16-year-old sister is you. So I went down to the basement where my room was, and I asked myself, did she just insult me or compliment me? Thinking that it was a compliment, 18 months later I married their daughter.
Really?
Are you serious?
Seriously?
So Mary and I have been married for 40 years.
Oh my goodness!
She
I
went
didn't know
through
that.
pharmacy school, medical school, residency, and fellowship, all as a married woman.
Pharmacy school and medical school?
Yes, so Mary is we have 3 children. Thank God they have a disproportionate amount of their mother's genes. It's all worked out.
Well, here's what I want to know. You've advanced yourself to the top rung of the ladder. What was your first job when you left Iowa State? What was the first thing you did?
I became a CPA and worked for a company called Pete Maurick Mitchell, today known as KPMG.
KPM, yeah.
Yeah, and I was there for 25 years, and things had gone extremely well. I was a managing partner. We were the largest in town. And KPMG asked me to transfer to Silicon Valley and head up a 7-state region. And my heart was not in it because I was so ingrained in this community.
Right.
So that night, Mary and I sat down after we put the kids down, and I said, Mary, this is what they want me to do, and it's pretty heavy-handed. It's a significant amount of money, but the money was not important. I had $4.87 when I had graduated from college, so, and Mary said, we're moving. And I said, Mary, you're from here? And she said, look, my mother has passed away. My dad has remarried to a woman I had introduced him to. On the side, I do matchmaking.
Well, that's good to
I'm working on my 7th one. The first 6 are all doing well. So in any event, the next morning I'm sitting in my office. I had 48 hours to make a decision, and I received a call from a client, the CEO of Meredith, Bill Kerr. And he said, I'd like to have lunch. And I'd never worked on Meredith, but I knew them really well since I was a managing partner. So we had lunch, and he said, I'd like you to become my CFO. And I said, Bill, I'm the least qualified person in America to be the CFO of a New York Stock Exchange company in the broadcasting and publishing business. And he said, let me be the judge of that. And I said, let me tell you what happened 18 hours ago. I was asked to transfer. And he said, my timing is great. When can you start? So that is, I called my wife.
It was that close.
I called my wife, and I said, Mary, you're not going to believe this. I just got offered the CFO position at Meredith. She said, you're the luckiest guy alive. So that is how I became the CFO of Meredith. And then 8.5 years later, John Ruan III called me. I've always been very close to the Ruans. They were clients, and I knew his father really well. And his father had Parkinson's, so John III had taken over, and he called me up and he said, I'd like to have lunch with you. So we had lunch, and he said, I'd really like you to become the CEO of Bankers Trust. And I said, have you been drinking? Because I said, John, that's Iowa's largest bank. I'm not qualified to be your CEO. I'm very happy at Meredith. And he said, well, the person you brought in has decided to retire 2 years before his contract is up, and I'd really like you to do it. So I decided that perhaps I should simply, as a friend, and a good friend, I said, John, I'm not the right person. Went home that night, talked to Mary, and Mary said, I think you ought to do it. I called John at home, and I said, John, Mary said I have to do it, and I always listen to women.
It's working well so far.
That is how I ended up at Bankers Trust, and the bank has done really, really well. We have doubled the size and tripled the earnings, and we're by far the largest bank in Iowa. And I always tell people we have a great team, and it's all in spite of my pathetic leadership.
What a great story.
Well, you have some incredible luck that has come your way, and I imagine it's because of the incredible work you've put into it. But what is it about this area that's made you want to stay? I mean, you were kind of plopped in here, told you it was in the middle of nowhere with some bad weather, but you wanted to stay.
And I've had plenty of opportunities of leaving. I speak 7 languages. A lot of people would say it's 8 when I learn English. But, the reality is it's such a great place to raise a family. People are just absolutely wonderful. And, we can travel whenever we want to. So it's not an issue of anything other than the fact that I just love this place. I'm really proud to be an Iowan. And as my wife says, you probably are planning on dying in Iowa. And I always say, damn right I am. It's a great place. I just love it, absolutely love it. I'm a big believer in giving back to community. And there are days when I need to have my head examined because I serve on 14 not-for-profit boards. So when somebody says, how much time do you spend at the bank? I'll simply just say, very little because I've got just a wonderful team. And we have a really interesting philosophy. We have 21% of our employees are minority, and 70% of our employees are women. So we are a very big believer in women's causes. And so lately I've been really involved in the Solheim Cup in 2017. That's a Ryder Cup for women, which is huge. 12 players from the U.S. and 12 from Europe play against each other. It's like the Ryder Cup, which is the men's event.
Right.
And it'll be held at Des Moines Golf and Country Club, and it'll probably be the biggest sporting event in Iowa history.
Wow.
So it's going to be a very big event. We'll probably have 10 to 11,000 Europeans here for the Solheim Cup, and another 50 to 60,000 attendees. 50% of those typically come from out of state. So it's held every 4 years on American soil.
And that's coming up when?
In 2017, and when I was asked to chair it, I didn't realize it was a committee of one. But probably the most important part is that 50% of the net proceeds will be donated to charity benefiting women in central Iowa. That was the only way I was going to do it, and I insisted. And I think the number is probably going to be more than $500,000 going to charity.
We had mentioned that in local Rip and Read headlines. As CEO of the biggest bank in Iowa, are there any issues or concerns concerns you have with the way our economy is going here in Iowa or in central Iowa?
You know, we don't have the peaks, the pronounced peaks and valleys the rest of the country has. We're generally fairly stable, and if you look at our unemployment rate, it's pretty remarkable where we are. Recently, we had a group from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they wanted to kind of find out how we do it so well in Des Moines. So there was a matrix, and there were rankings. They were number 52. We were number 1 in the peer group. They were just absolutely astounded. So they wanted to get a sense. Last night I got an email, and another 18 of them are coming back to Des Moines. They want to do a deeper dive. So when I take a look at this particular part of the country, very stable employment, great work ethic. So I think we get it. I really think we get it extremely well. So we found a way to overcome the adversity of weather, continue to grow the community, and continue to have a very, very good public education system. I think families are very important, and we have a very good balance. We don't have a long commute, a lot of those things. So it works pretty well.
Can I come work for you? Do you have any openings over there?
No, you got a great job here.
Would you be a cool boss to work for?
Do you have any, before we go, do you have any words of advice to kids that maybe be leaving college or not sure what they're going into with only $4 in their pocket like you did, but
well, you know,
to achieve great things like
every weekend at 6 a.m., I mentor kids. At 6 is the first one because the coffee shop opens at 6. It'd be 5 otherwise.
Right.
They get 1 hour, and so I do 10 hours every weekend. And it's typically kids who have been out of college 3 to 5 years, and they always ask, how do I get ahead, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what I tell them is, first of all, there are no shortcuts in life. Secondly, make an investment in yourself, become a lifelong learner. I don't care if you graduated from any school with a 4-point grade point, but the reality is, it's just the beginning of a journey.
Right.
It's not a destination. It's just a journey. So you always tell them there are no shortcuts. Invest in yourself. And I also tell people that it's awfully important to have really good oral and written communication skills. You can have everything you want with technology, but the reality is it's great to think high tech, but be high touch.
Isn't that, and nowadays everyone's staring at their phone all the time.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And typing.
Typing and the distractions and everything, yeah, exactly. Almost an excuse.
Right.
Yeah. I always, remember the story I would tell about our youngest. One night, as she was about 5, we'd pray every night. Mary or I would read to her, and then my job was to pray with her. And she said, Dad, I think I get it. I don't need your help. I can pray. So as I'm walking out of the room, I heard her say, she was saying the Lord's Prayer, and she said, and deliver us from email. And I'll never I said, boy, that says it all.
That would be it. That would be it. Well, something, it's been an honor to meet you.
Well, it's an honor meeting all of you.
Really,
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The CEO of Bankers Trust, Suku. I love your new logo, by the way. The shield, that is really nice. It really does represent you well.
Thank you, sir.
But Bankers Trust, the biggest bank in Iowa, and the man in charge right here. It's 3 minutes before